There's 404 days of summer vacation, and school comes along just to fall.
Oh, son of a bitch!
Oh boy, would you look at that. Summer's over already. It seems like just yesterday that I was rolling into June on the Meme Express. Anyway, I've started college. Super hyped for that, but this video is about something that happened to me about this time last year. I'm talking about when I entered senior year of high school. Now, I should preface this by saying that I really try not to be an edgy person. I actually try to enjoy life. I try to have a positive attitude whenever I can, and I don't like to complain about my situation and disposition unless I've experienced something completely infuriating. This is one of those cases. Out of everything, if I had to choose one topic about my life to complain about, this would be it. Because if you asked me the question, hey Emp, what's the angriest you've ever been in your entire life? This story is about that point. Like I said earlier, I'm not usually in a bad mood. I can probably count on two hands the number of times per year when I'm legitimately pissed off for more than a few hours at a time. I just tend to get over stuff really easily and move on. However, the reason this story is so significant is because I was pissed off not for a few hours, not for a few days, but legitimately for an entire month, from August through September of last year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of the series of events which led me to the angriest stage of my entire life. Our story begins the first fucking day of senior year. Well, actually, it starts even before that. You see, I went to public school in the same school district since the 4th grade, and every single year the school would begin sometime around August 20th. Yet despite this, the school board inexplicably decided to move the start date of school to August 10th for my final year.
Lame.
So I effectively got robbed of an entire week of my final summer vacation. This didn't really bother me too much, but during the first week I was slightly annoyed that I was stuck in school on dates, which for the previous decade was still summer vacation, but in all honesty I wasn't too disappointed. It was just one inconvenience after all. Also starting in senior year, the school library suddenly became a slight bit incompetent. In all 3 previous years at my high school, it never took me more than 2 separate trips to the library before I got all of my textbooks for my classes. In senior year, it took me at least
4 chicken McNuggets.
I may have lost count. First the system was down, then the books were missing, then a bunch of logistical problems that I'd never experienced before at this school. At this point I was still just slightly annoyed, but I carried on. At the beginning of every school year, I like to buy a planner, a little notebook for writing assignments and test dates. I relied on it to remember the dozens of assignments I had on a weekly basis. So I walk over to the front office on day 2 of school, and they tell me that they're sold out of planners on day fucking 2. Keep in mind that in the 11 previous years of school which I've experienced, whichever school I was in never ran out of planners until at least October, much less the second fucking day. I later learned that the bulk of the planners were sold at the freshman orientation, but that doesn't really excuse the school for running out of planners on the second day. It just shows a complete lack of planning on their part. Now at this point, I was becoming fairly frustrated that there were already 3 separate upsetting incidents by day 2 of senior year. But oh boy, that was just the beginning. Here's where the story starts getting good, and by that I mean bad, very bad. So, I need a locker. I'm taking advanced classes, and I have a lot of books and binders, and I need a place to put my stuff. So get this. My school thought it would be a good idea to let freshmen pick their lockers first, then sophomores, then juniors and seniors. Why freshmen were given the priority over seniors yet again, I'll never know. It should also be noted that over the summer the county had changed the zoning laws over high school attendance, so this year there were about 200 more freshmen than there were in the previous year. This is important, because by the time I got to pick my locker, nearly all of the lockers were taken. There was only one group of lockers in the middle of all my classes with vacancies still available. If I picked a locker anywhere else, I would risk being late for at least one of my classes throughout the day. So I scouted out the lockers over there, and boy, it's slim pickings. I did spot one that was available that I could tolerate, so I go to rent it, but the clerk says that somebody already owned it. For those of you who don't know, it's a pretty common practice to turn locks upside down if the locker is vacant, and right side up if it's in use. The locker I saw had a lock which was upside down, but apparently somebody had already rented it. So at this point, lunch is almost over, and I need to get to class soon, so I just say fuck it. I ask the clerk, can you just give me any locker in this area that's vacant? Ooh, looks like this one's available. Let's just say that there was a reason that this locker was available, because the locker I got was disgusting! It was a bottom locker in a corner, and I knew the roof leaked over it because the ground underneath was covered with black stuff as opposed to the gray concrete typical of the school. I think it was a combination of dirt, mold, and rat feces, and every time it rained, water would fall from the ceiling and splatter the black stuff all over my locker door. I felt like each day I would get hepatitis, AIDS, or some undiscovered disease because I'm certain that the forces of evolution were hard at work in that black stuff. The lock itself was nearly rusted shot from the water exposure, and it barely worked. It took me so long fiddling with the combination that I just had to leave it unlocked at all times to avoid being late for class. One day there was an exceptionally heavy rainstorm, which kicked up enough water that one of the books inside of my locker actually got waterlogged. So what we had here was a locker that couldn't lock and couldn't provide shelter. And I paid $5 for the privilege to use this thing. After that textbook got soiled, I just gave up and started stowing my books in the backseat of my car. I called it the La Car. Get it? Haha, I'm so clever and funny. Oh boy, and speaking of my car, funny thing is, I actually made a video about this on my alt about a year ago, the day that it happened, and you can look it up, it's still there. But if you don't want to watch it, long story short, I'm a tryhard at school. I like getting good grades. I got my GPA high enough that by senior year, I qualified for honors student parking, which was much nicer than the shithole that was the general students parking.
Holy shit!
It was closer to the school, and you could leave as soon as school ended. It's just a little carrot for the kids who have endured the miles upon miles of stick required to get to the top 5% of the class. Now, before I talk about what happens next, all of you need to know that the events which I've already described in this video have been happening one after the other, and for the first 2 weeks of school my frustration has been building and building to the point where I'm almost at my breaking point. I like to think about a concept of what I call nuclear rage. It's a level of anger which is just a cut above any period of common rage. It's a stage where you just lose control of your cognitive abilities and you just become a faucet of fury. You're not yourself anymore, you just become a primal beast of aggression, and the anger takes full control of your body, and you completely fucking melt down. It's like going Super Saiyan, but for anger. I've only reached this level of rage a few times in my entire life, and last year, in 2015, my high school pushed me to this level because on one afternoon I returned to my car in the parking lot and see that it's been blocked! No, seriously, my school built a wall of fucking automobiles to keep me in school.
What the fuck is this?
I should explain here that my high school has always had a traffic problem. But rather than actually tackling the root of the problem and redesigning the shitty roads, they just decide to hotfix everything by cutting as many corners as possible. So the school sacrificed the honors parking lot to the traffic gods by funneling all of the parent pickup traffic through the honors parking lot so that you cannot physically pull out of your parking spot unless the traffic allowed you. I went to talk to the principal after seeing this, and he unapologetically informed me that this was a permanent traffic change.
Tactical nuke incoming! Come on, motherfuckers, come on! Come on, motherfuckers, come on! Yeah! Come on, motherfuckers, come on! Come on, motherfuckers, come on!
was at this point when I completely lost all respect and faith in my high school. And I'd actually liked my high school up until this time. It was at this point when senior year was completely soiled beyond any scrap of repair. It took my school 2.5 fucking weeks. That parking spot was the one final solitary thing that I was clinging to tell myself, well, at least I have this. And my school had to fuck that up for me too. I don't want to come off as entitled by saying this whole spiel because I could honestly care less about having a functional locker and a good parking spot. But when I am being blatantly treated worse than every other student in this school for basically no reason, being denied basic school services that were available to the last 10 grades before me, that's where I draw the fucking line. Not only was I treated worse than others, I was being treated worse than fresh men as a senior. In case you haven't pieced together the puzzle yet, there's a bit of a theme emerging here. For some bizarre fucking reason, my high school in 2015 decided that it was time for the seniors to take a backseat to fucking freshmen. For 3 years, I busted my ass not going to parties and not fucking around and not treating high school like a big fucking joke. I aced all the standardized tests that you administrators wear like a fucking badge of honor. I always followed the rules and never got in trouble. And then I get to the oh so prestigious senior year, and what do you give me? A slap in my fucking face and a piss stream in my mouth. I'm not asking for a fucking medal, I'm just asking for a little bit of fucking respect. But no, you stick me a notch under the freshly hatched 8th graders on the school totem pole. You're gonna give out the choice lockers to the kids who think that half an hour of homework and 1 test per week is hard. You're gonna ruin my honors parking spot so that I can get blocked by a fat SUV driven by an even fatter housewife, just so that little Billy freshman can get picked up 10 minutes earlier. And if you're a freshman watching this video, I'm fucking sorry, but you need to know your role and shut your mouth. Come talk to me when your parents no longer have to drive you around everywhere you go. Anyway, like I said earlier, this whole series of events just ruined my entire senior year before it even began. Because honestly, what did I have to look forward to for the rest of the year? I was in senior year of IB.
Cancer.
If you don't know what that is, it's basically expert mode of high school. It's just like regular classes, except you have 4 times as much homework, have to write a research paper for every class, and have to prepare for 20 plus hours of exams at the end of the year when everyone else has stopped working, and you delude yourself into thinking that the work will end, but it won't. It's just an endless stream and it's never over. Just a boatload of fun for the whole family. Oh, and don't forget a bunch of college applications sprinkled in between the rest of the fun. This was stuff that I was expecting to do anyway, so I'm not really complaining about it, but doing it under a school regime which completely disrespects you gets really demoralizing really quickly. And for the remaining 170 school days, that's how I operated. And that, for me, was the worst part of senior year. Knowing that no matter how maturely I acted and how hard I worked, in spite of when I turned 18 and legally became an adult, this school was going to treat me like a fucking mentally retarded child until I walked out of those doors for the final time. All those beautiful days in autumn and spring, wasted, as I sit, caged in a room, studying subjects that I would immediately forget after being tested on it, all so that I could compete in the rat race to get into college. And day after day, you sit, indoors, occasionally glancing out of the window, watching the birds fly free, and wanting nothing more than to join them, even for a minute. But no, you have to take notes on 20th century single-party authoritarian leaders. Whoopity-doo! Hundreds of days pass and you know in your head that the end is approaching, but the days don't feel any different. They're all the same. They've been the same for the last 11 grades. You've spent the last 11 years of your life consuming and regurgitating information in a room, watching the birds outside for a second, then going back to watching your textbook. You know, the most important thing. Sure, textbooks change, but you haven't. At least in the eyes of the school. You're just student number 397,135, a statistic. And it doesn't fucking matter how the school treats you because you're just gonna come to school anyway, day after day, doing more homework, more projects, more essays, more studying, more exams. And then all of a sudden, it's over.
Psych!
Well, that's my story. Most of the time when someone tells a story of school problems, it involves some bully or an asshole teacher, but my experience is just so bizarre because the only real antagonist I faced was the school administration itself. I can't even pin this on one individual in charge, and at the risk of sounding cliche, the only way to describe it was that I was just getting worked over by the system. For some reason, I was under the impression that senior year was supposed to be this grand hurrah to celebrate the end of 12 years of public education. And maybe it is for most people, but for me, the notion that senior year of high school was supposed to be one of the best years of my life was a bigger crock of shit than Shrek's outhouse. But that's not to say it was all bad. I liked talking about this bullshit with my friends. I liked when it was over. And now that I've thought about it, in spite of literally everything I've said in the past 10 minutes, I can actually say that this whole experience actually benefited me in the long run. Sure, the school has treated me unfairly, but you know what else is unfair? Life. It's just inevitable that whether you expect it or not, you're gonna get fucked in the ass. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it other than bend over, hold your breath, unclench your sphincter, and just fucking take it. I apologize for the lack of a cathartic resolution, but that's just the way it is. This is a lesson that everyone will learn at one time or another. And I was lucky enough to learn this when I was still in high school during a time when, if I fucking crashed and burned, I still had a safety net to fall back on. Right now I'm beginning my first year of college, and so far it feels like school has reset to kindergarten. Not in the sense that it's easy, quite the opposite actually. I'm making this comparison because the transition into both college and kindergarten involves a major alteration of life as you know it. The process of becoming an autonomous, fully functional adult is a huge leap, which I'm actively trying to perform every day now. And if I had just cruised through high school problem-free, and then something like this happened to me now, I'm honestly not sure if I would be able to handle it. But in reality, I did go through this tumultuous experience, and now I am stronger and more equipped to handle future situations like it. I also believe that this whole experience profoundly changed my attitude towards life for the better. This past summer after graduation was without a doubt the greatest time of my entire life. I was just so fucking happy not to be in high school anymore. And I'm still happy. So I guess at the end of the day, I've got to say, thank you senior year of high school for fucking me. It was the most valuable lesson you ever taught me.
The only thing that's for sure about EmpLemon is
His high school has been on a downward spiral educationally, and now they've lost his respect completely. Downward spiral.
EmpLemon.
And hey, while you're unsubscribing from me because this isn't a YouTube poop, you might want to check out my Sweetmates channel. He makes Agario videos if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
Been Boaz for a long time.